it doesn't come more high concept than Grand Piano. It's probably the craziest pitch of all the films at the London Film Festival. Do you want to quickly just lay that out for us?
I completely agree with you, and that describes a little bit my amusement when I sat down and I read the script. Because the premise was, of course, the first thing that I heard about the script, and I thought, well, I assume that there are like different angles or ways to approach this premise, but no. I mean, the script was like, it had that premise in every single page. It was like, what is this? I can't believe they did this. I can't believe they did this. So yeah, to me, it was part of the challenge. A premise like that, take it seriously. That's where I invest all my energy in, and I'm very happy that I didn't freak out.
So it's been touted as speed on a piano, phone booth in a classical musical hall. What do you make of those comparisons? Do you welcome that sort of comparison?
I like that when you make suspense or thriller, of course you're following a tradition, and I like to think that the genre stays alive when you add new elements to a basic premise or rules of the game. And I always felt very comfortable with that. I remember being a kid and watching A Nightmare on Elm Street and figuring out where they're going to push the envelope to, or on a werewolf movie, to say, oh, in this movie, they only can get killed with by silver bullets, but at the same time, if they use ultrasounds, they can turn werewolves into humans or something. I mean, when there's something new in a genre, it always feels fresh. But it has to be a combination, and I think that in this particular movie, being compared to those titles, it's super right because yes, it's a thriller, but it's completely different to anything I've seen before.
And of course, so many scripts will have not many scripts will have, like we said, a concept as crazy as this one. But usually those scripts with high concepts, you read those with expectations, and very rarely are those expectations met. So you must have been excited not only by the idea of somebody playing this impossible piece of music, and if he hits a bum note, he's shot, but the fact that the script pulls it off.
Yeah, well, that was a big relief. When I saw that at the end of the movie, the whole plot relied more on the characters' feelings rather than the plot itself, to me it was a big relief. It was a payoff that, to me, understand. I like to think that the most powerful vessel for a story is the realization process of a character, that it starts in a point and goes to another one. Understanding it itself, himself in this case, and who he was and who he is at the end of the movie. Thank God that was on the script. And I said, okay, this is a premise, it's crazy, the plot, it works, it's true, you want to go all the script through to know what happens. But there is this emotional payoff at the ending, with him needing to finish the impossible, the unplayable piece. And once I saw that was covered, like it wasn't just a gimmick, I felt like, okay, this is a green light, let's go for it.
And the film is produced by Rodrigo Cortés, the director of Buried and Red Lights. And with Buried, I think there's a comparison there as well. In that film, the whole thing rested on Ryan Reynolds' shoulders, and very much so the same way with Elijah Wood. He's in every frame of this thing. Was Rodrigo ever in line to? Was he the guy that brought the script to you, and was he in line to direct it before you came on board?
Actually, it was his partner Adrian Guerra. That is the one that back in the day found the script of Buried for him. The fact that Buried worked so well, and then they made Red Lights, established a confidence in the market and the people that really wanted to work with them again as producers. So I think that they weren't looking for something that was close necessarily to Buried. It's just that we were fortunate enough to do it. The best thing, in keeping in mind the history of Nostromo as a production company, is that the quality of Grand Piano, that it resonated as a derivative of Buried, it wasn't ever part of our plan. But the fact that it existed, it was going to be making very easy to close the financing, like from the guys who brought you Buried Grand Piano. But it was an accident. It's not that they were looking for a Buried for Eugenio Mira. It was that, actually I read other two scripts, and they were both very interesting. It's just that this one had this quality that that it was like mind-blowing, and that it felt like you'd never seen something like this. That's what I really wanted to go for. So it's fine. It's great to have, as a producer, a guy that has been suffering and struggling to make work a movie about a guy in a coffin. Because in that regard, it's even more extreme than Grand Piano. But Grand Piano is more hard to believe for other reasons, and that's the challenge that I went for. So it's been it's great to work with filmmakers as producers. This is my first time, and what can I say? I can't wait to repeat the same formula.
You had made films before this, of course. This is your third feature, but I'm wondering actually if your work as second unit director on The Impossible was a big part of you landing the job, just because that film is so technically proficient, and this film similarly it demands that as well.
The thing is that I started from the most difficult side possible. I started when I was 22 and made a short film, Fade. I shot it in English, in Spanish, with sad slides. It was fantastic. It was set it's a period piece with a steampunk kind of Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman thing that I'm a huge fan since I'm a kid. And nobody expected that from me. Thanks to that short film, I found a producer that wanted to produce my first movie. That is The Birthday, starring Corey Feldman. And the movie itself takes place in a hotel in Baltimore in 1987 that we built in Barcelona. And it's a real-time piece for real. I mean, Grand Piano, it's partially real-time. Well, you may argue maybe 60% of the movie is real-time. But with The Birthday, it's 117 minutes, with Corey Feldman literally in every single shot. Rodrigo, back in the day before he turned into a producer, he saw that movie, and he's a big fan of that particular movie from the very beginning. So I think that I could say the same for Bayona. Bayona loved The Birthday, and it was a technical achievement. In some ways, even more, how to say it, bolder and crazy than what we did in Grand Piano, despite they're very different. So I think that Bayona relied on me as a second unit director because of that first movie that I made when I was 26. And Rodrigo thought that I could do it too because of that. On the other hand, I love the making the second unit of a movie like The Impossible. There's a message thrown out there that I'm waiting for, having these technical challenges, because I've always been a huge fan of Robert Zemeckis or Alfonso Cuarón, people that had this thing in their minds that they really want to push the envelope of technology in order to find new areas of excitement and when it comes to expand the narrative and the boundaries of what cinema can accomplish. So what can I say? I mean, with Grand Piano, it's like suddenly I feel like maybe if somebody needs a guy like me, they're going to think that it's a good idea. And I never planned this situation. It's something that came natural.
And The Birthday having Corey Feldman, he's an 80s icon. And in this film, Grand Piano, you've got another 80s icon, Alex Winter, from the Bill and Ted movies. That just seems too coincidental to me. Like you were trying to fill that gap, and I've got to get someone from that period, which you're obviously very fond of. How did he get involved? Because he doesn't act a whole lot these days. The
thing is that I knew that he wasn't interested in acting anymore, because his acting career is an accident. When he was a kid, he was acting in Broadway musicals. That's funny. He worked in Peter Pan in the 80s. That was before he played a lost boy in The Lost Boys. That's a reference to Peter Pan. That's kind of crazy. But I've been following his career as a director. I love what he did with MTV. He directed videos for Helmet and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I was a metalhead back in the day. I still am. And
me too.
And I followed his career, and I saw his movie Fever in 1999. That was the first year that I attended Cannes Film Festival. And I saw that he was one of the guests. And so, oh my God, Alex Winter from Bill and Ted. And he made Frigged, and he's made another movie. And it's a thriller with Henry Thomas, the guy from E.T., that they're very close friends. So I was like freaking out. When I get back from Cannes, I start to look on the internet, and I saw that he was working in episodics and big TV shows and making advertising videos and films. So I have to say that being a big fan of Steven Spielberg, the fact that he worked with Francois Truffaut in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Richard Attenborough in Jurassic Park, and Matthew Kassovitz in Munich, directors working with directors as actors, and me being Robert De Niro for, Rodrigo Cortés in Red Lights, I thought that it was perfect. You feel very confident when you have somebody that understands the whole process. And being a fan of his work as an actor and a director, it felt natural. My surprise is that he accepted. But I had this Skype conversation, and I just talked about his career as a director. And I think that he liked that. The fact that I'm not just a guy that like a geek of the 80s that is, oh my God, Bill and Ted is so important in my life. Actually, I told him that when I saw it for the first time with my sister, we thought that it was a half-assed derivative of Back to the Future that we loved, and he laughed very hard. We're friends. I'm following his new projects. He made this documentary called Downloaded on Napster. He's preparing another one that is very controversial and fascinating. And I'm very proud to say that he's been very clear to me that if I call him again, he will join me. So I couldn't ask more. It's a dream come true.
Yeah, it is great to see him back in front of the camera.
Oh, it's amazing to see. And well, the other 80s element is John Cusack himself. I mean, that guy comes from Say Anything, Cameron Crowe's movie. It feels like a John Hughes movie. And John Cusack started with John Hughes. The movie takes place in Chicago. That is an incredibly... It's John Hughes, New York. It's his place. With Ferris Bueller Days Off. The final parade with Matthew Broderick in the streets of Chicago. And High Fidelity, John Cusack's movie, takes place in Chicago too. So suddenly we got all these elements that were pointing, because of Rampiano, it's set in Chicago. I had nothing to do with that. And well, the last thing I have to say is that we called the theater, and the script was Anthony Phillips Hall, and I call it Anthony Michael Hall. That happens to be the first actor John Cusack worked with in his first movie. So it was like, what are we doing? Is this kind of, when cinema turns, there's a thin line between illusionism and witchcraft. And I think in this one, we stepped a little bit into the Alias or Crowley thing.
Well, the thing with John Cusack is that this part feels very much like a continuation of this very recent switch in his career, where he's playing, nasty, slimy, deprived bad guys. So you've had the Paperboy and the Frozen Ground before this. I mean, is this something that he talked to you about? Because it's something that has really puzzled a lot of people.
I had a chance to hang out with him after shooting the week that we spent together in Barcelona. In 2 occasions, we went out to dinner with friends, Elijah and Alex. We had drinks and we smoked cigars. He loves Cuban cigars. I do too. And it was amazing to talk about his career, future projects, American politics. He's very active. You only have to go to his Twitter page to see that he's always like cutting and pasting articles here and there. And I think that it is my understanding that he had the chance to turn into this huge name, and he's been operating like in 1997, 1998. And he had this big, like a blockbuster kind of romantic comedies with Diane Lane and about dogs and stuff. And something in him is like he misses the bold and crazy and strange material. Keep in mind that he was, in 1999, he made Being John Malkovich. But before that, he was The Grifters, and he worked with Clint Eastwood, and one of his strangest movies, and Woody Allen in Bullets Over Broadway. There's one of the masterpieces of the 90s of Woody Allen. So I think that he's interested in challenges, and he recognized in Rampiano not only that he could play a bad guy that he did before, only very recently. It's just the fact that he liked the idea of being absent physically. So his character was like, in a way, manifesting in the brain of Tom Selznick and the audience, but not the audience in the theater, the audience that is buying a ticket to see this Elijah Wood movie. So yeah, he was very clear about this script caught my attention. They don't make movies like this anymore, and even in this particular movie, there's nothing like it before. So those two things together call his attention. I like to think of his participants in the movie, what he does compared to what Marlon Brando did in Richard Donner's Superman. It's like his presence is in all the movie, despite the days that we spent shooting was like just a few.
Well, in terms of the voiceover, which is predominantly most of his part that he's heard in an earpiece as Elijah Wood is playing the piano, how long did that take to record? And I'm assuming, obviously, you were heavily involved in that. Was it, in post?
What we did is we went first for a read-through, with minor indications. John went from all dialogue, and then we edited it. Like some lines he repeated 3 times until it was right, but without too much detail. We cut it in a way to keep in mind that the movie it's broken down in very specific shots, so we could go for this click sound and we have the question of John, and then Elijah could hear it, and there was a space for his answer, and then there was another question, but the answer was in another shot. So we built up this incredible puzzle with that first level of performance. When the movie was cut together, we rewrote 6% of the lines to make sure that we have what we wanted, and we directed. I mean, I was there directing John Cusack. He was in LA, I was in Spain. It took like 3 hours and a half. It was exhausting, but he started like being very loyal to the character, that what he already recorded, because at the beginning he's very calm down, but the moment that he starts to be like losing it, there was a very interesting range of dynamics, and we started to play with it, and he offered me like 3 or 4 different things. It's like, okay, now you have to be like disappointed, but now we're gonna try like you're really, really pissed off of him. And I know that it's too soon, but it makes sense because blah, blah, blah. And I was like dealing with him all the time. And I have to say that he was very generous, really, really generous. And that we then could build, it's the only thing in the movie that we build up editing, because most of the movie is preconceived. He's the only one who could enjoy seeing the whole thing and understanding that what he was doing is could react to everything else. So it was interesting. It's been key to make the whole thing work. Leave that performance part to the end of the process.
I wanted to talk about the pieces of music that Elijah Wood performs, or he's seen to perform. Were those in the script, or did the music come later? Like, how aware was the screenwriter, of the music and its place in the film?
Originally, when I read the script, I took for granted that Damien Chazelle used real music as a reference, because he mentioned this composer that is not Patrick Guggenheim that we created. It was Mussorgsky, that happens to be a real composer. So the first thing I did is I Googled it, and I went for this concert number 9, and there was no such a thing. It was like a total different thing. I mean, it never existed. Damien was very good defining the instruments and what it was required, blah, 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 and the horns grow here, the pizzicatos, blah, blah, but he didn't know what he was talking about. He was just favoring the events.
To create atmosphere for the reader.
Exactly, but that was like, oh my God, so we're going to have to create the music from scratch. And that's what we did, but in order to make it effective, because I'm a musician, before I met Victor Reyes, that is the composer, I said, well, we have to collaborate in a way, you have to trust me, because I'm going to use the events and the dialogues and the timing and the cadence of, let's say, a movement of the 4 that are played. That if it's, for example, it's 3 pages, I have to time it out to see how long it is, how much the lines of Tom and the lines of the bad guy expand in time, and the hollow distance between silence that are going to be filled with actions. I have to time out the whole thing. So I did, and I found out that the 3 pages were in this particular third movement. It was like 5 minutes 38 seconds. With that, then I added a click. Like with the click, I saw that there's some actions that they could be with a hit, so I delayed and removed the things. Like I wouldn't do that, bam, like in a musical. When I had that, I started to play with this Frankenstein version of different movements, from Prokofiev, Rachmaninoff, pieces of Stravinsky, jazz piano concertos without orchestra, pianos and orchestra, jazz orchestra. And I went, like, I want to start with blah, 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 something like that. And then the piano answers to that. So, Mozart, very convenient, I put it. I created this thing, and when I had this 5 minutes, then I started to whistle something, an original tune, that it makes sense. And then I started to arrange it a little bit, and we work on that. So the musician could have all this dirty work in advance, and he could work in a world where he was going to be able to defy the whole thing, but knowing that there is this thing that can be changed, and that that we had this goal to make people believe that the actions were following a pre-established music and not the contrary. That's what we were doing. So it's been a really, really complex procedure of reverse engineering the events and the music holding together.
So he had a template to work from.
Exactly. He had a template, like a grid.
Yeah.
But he knew when we had to go to the explosions and the major chords, and when there was some play, and when he didn't. He needed to know all that in advance. he couldn't make it to me. Yeah, we couldn't use something that a composer does because it will never fit. It will never work. The thing is that when we had what we wanted based on my specifics, and we had the cutting, he had the chance to go for a draft where he felt liberated because he knew what he had to respect and all the room that he had to change it because of the movements of the orchestra. He could write almost anything. There was a lot of room, and that's what makes feel natural as a whole. I mean, he defied pretty much. He changed a lot of stuff. Maybe most of the stuff is original, but based on that template that granted us that we were going on the right path. It's incredibly crazy, unorthodox way of doing things, but we had to create it for this particular movie. All you learn to figure out all the problems and kill the abstract elements of it, it's only useful for this particular movie. And you develop that. It's like a software that you only develop for one specific movie, and then you get rid of it and you keep moving.
So Elijah Wood sat up there on the piano stool. There's no, it doesn't seem apparent that there's any CGI trickery.
No.
That is him doing it.
Well, that's been a long process. Elijah had contact with the piano when he was 12, I think, and he left him when he was 14, but he totally forgot. He knows the basics, that this is the low frequencies, there's the high frequencies, that there are octaves that repeat the structure, and then there's a basic position, that this is something that you can be here, you can be here, you can be here. Very, very vague concepts. The good thing is that when I met him in 2010 at Fantastic Fest, we had this karaoke awards and stuff, and I saw him that he was very good with rhythm, and that was like 80% of it. I knew that we were going to be successful, because some people, it's really bad at that. But if you can do a Metallica riff, you know, like, and the snare goes to the right place, that's pretty much everything about piano. This is like the kick, and this is like the snare. It's like dun, 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 dun. You got it. It's not like in drums. There's the low, there's the high. He could do it. Then they talked about, you have to hit the right note with the pinky. Everything else you don't have to worry about. And step by step we went going to where we wanted. The thing is that what he gave us is 3 times more than what we expected. Only doing what we needed, it would have been fantastic. But thanks to him, we could expand the boundaries of what was required in a shot. And I think that pays off clearly in the movie. Like, he really, really feels confident when he plays.
So his casting literally came down to the fact that you were doing karaoke at Fantastic Fest, and a light bulb went off, and you said, well, he's the guy.
Actually, in 2010, I was showing Agnosia, my second movie, at the fest. We met as civilians, like, oh yes, the actor, blah, blah, blah. And we had this nice connection. Next year, 2011, I read already the script back in July, and it was September. I was open-minded. We were discussing who could be playing Tom Selznick. And when I met him, I didn't know if he would remember me. He looked at me and said, Eugenio. And he came to me and he gave me a hug. And from that point on, it was like day after day, I started like, wait. Wonder Boy, skillful, kind, that's Tom Selznick. It's perfect. And when I came back and talked to my producers, I said, guys, I think that he should be perfect. He will be perfect. And they were like, well, okay. And 48 hours, we were like, yes, he's the guy. We sent him the script, and 48 hours later, he said, I'll do it. I love it. So it's been I think that we've been very fortunate.
We talked about the film's place in the thriller genre and within history, really. But I'd also like to hear about stylistics, in that for me, and I'm assuming any cinephile who watches the film, the 2 things immediately that it seems to evoke are Brian De Palma and Dario Argento. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about those influences? It's more in terms of style as opposed to genre.
Well, keep in mind that I come from the southeast of Spain, the Mediterranean, and that you may argue that Valencia is the Italian Spain. And there is a tradition of music, and every single kid learns to play an instrument for the parades and stuff, like with horns or the clarinet. I skipped that and I went straight to the piano, but it's true that there is an operatic sense of drama in the Mediterranean, and that's something that you can see. The Godfather 3, Part 3, for example. I have to say that I never seen Giallo, and Argento's work as inspiring to me, because I stumbled across it when I was a huge De Palma film and Hitchcock and Spielberg and Cronenberg and Lynch. When I saw that, I was 16 years old. I think the first time I saw it, yeah. And that's in my building as a filmmaker, it's too late. I mean, it never was an influence. It's true that when it comes to the palette of colors and stuff, the red and all that, I will mention Nicolas Roeg. Nicolas Roeg is by far a late influence. I'm not going to say influence, I'm going to say I recognize myself with him. It's because it's my understanding that he was very interested in the occult and witchcraft and mysticism. And there's something in Nicolas Roeg's movies that when I see Dario Argento, I see aesthetics, but when I see Nicolas Roeg, I see metaphysics. It's like he plays with you in a really distinct. I think that he comes from a different place, and that Dario Argento, nothing wrong with that, but it's mainly aesthetics, and that's it. And what with aesthetics we can do, maybe he wouldn't agree, but Nicolas Roeg definitely the use of the red color. Wow, I'm very impressed with Nicolas. Super impressed. And getting back to the real influences, I think that the best examples what Francis Ford Coppola did in Dracula. In Dracula, he put together German expressionism from silent movies and Giallo. And if you take a look at it, I mean, and it's operistic, and it's super aesthetic, but at the same time, it's very disturbing. That kind of doing hip hop, but not like Quentin Tarantino, that he takes a sample of something and he put it there, and he's super fine with you recognizing it. I think that Coppola tried to do something unique and operistic in Dracula. That attitude of putting together all this tradition of the illusionism or stage shows into a movie, in a way, I think that Coppola will be the biggest influence because of this operistic Italian sense of it. So the Giallo thing is more like a consequence of the same root, but it's not where it comes from.
I mentioned De Palma purely because you have these incredible one-take shots, and I was struck watching the film that you've got Elijah Wood attempting to play an impossible piece of music, and the challenge is not to hit a bum note. That has to be applicable also to your crew, to camera operators and lighting technicians who have to hit very specific cues, actors who have to hit marks, otherwise it's resetting the whole thing, and that can be obviously time consuming and very costly. So talk about that.
It's not easy. I mean, it demands everybody to work 3 times more than what they used to in an average movie about a couple having an argument in a restaurant and then somebody takes a cab and it's raining or not. I mean, this movie is really ridiculous. The amount of beats of things. That's why it's illusionism on the verge of reaching witchcraft, because of the amount of bold and anti-natural things that are almost unholy things that we invoked in front of the camera. That's what I think. I belong to the school of sound engineering and music producing, like Steve Albini, that produced Nirvana and New Roses, very different bands, Fugazi. That it's all about the microphones and the placement, but the magic happens right in front of that. You only have to take care of having the highest level of loyalty to what's going on right in front of you to make it turn into magic. And I belong to the same school in cinema. Hitchcock is a guy that he didn't care what happened before the cut at the beginning and the cut after the shot. It was all about what happens between these 2 cuts. And he always gave to the cut a semantic value. The moment that you abandon a shot and go to the next one has a reason and has a value. So yes, in this movie, imagine the amount of bits that we had to put between 2 cuts, that we knew that we literally had no coverage shot to put in the middle in the case that it didn't work. So there's something tells me by experience, because in the first movie, The Birthday, it was as crazy as this, if not more. That when you get into this realm, you have this, it's like being, I don't do drugs, but it's like being in an ultra state. And everybody's super perceptive. And getting back to the witchcraft thing, you have all these people super focused on one thing. It's almost like quantum physics. I mean, we're affecting the result. I know that I was watching the other day in a movie, and I was already starting to forget how we get there. I don't feel like now we're having this interview. I know what it's to say, oh, I'm thirsty, and asking to somebody to bring me a glass of water. But I'm not that kind of guy. It's like, I wait, we're finished, and I'll do it. But when we're shooting the movie, oh my God. It's like this kind of reciprocal dictatorship that favors every one of us because they want to do what I want to do, and they know it for months before, and we're in the heat of the moment, and it's like being in the middle of war or something. You're like, with adrenaline kicking, and everybody wants to make it work. And of course you cannot invoke that in real life. It should be illegal, and it feels wrong. But making a movie, in this particular movie, every single shot at the end was like a celebration. And it wasn't. In most cases, it's relief because okay, one less to go. But in this case, it was like, oh, we get the 37B violet serial 34 shot that we've been talking about. We named the shots. Some of them is the Wayne shot, the long one that ends with a fake split screen that it happens to be a split screen. Oh, we got the money shot that was a Taylor crane shot on the dolly track that stops in a particular moment and then pans to the left. I mean, a lot of technical things. I mean, we got the 360. We had to delete digitally people and technicians and the tracks of the dolly. There's a 360 and all the reflections on the piano. We were covering with black sheets so people get it reflect. I mean, crazy. I mean, the making of is going to be a good one. I can't wait to show you the Blu-ray.
So there is going to be an extensive behind the scenes.
Well, not as extensive as I would like to, but because this movie.
Oh, so it's already been put together as we speak.
Yeah, the pieces are together. We use some of them for VOD and Blu-ray. Keep in mind that the movie is going to be released in the U.S. by Magnolia in January. So all those materials had to be ready, and I've supervised all of it, and I'm very happy. But I need more. I think there's things that is like only the Wayne shot, the one following Alan Leach from the corridors and at the feet of the stage to the second floor and the corridor and getting killed. That's something that deserves just a featurette about how he made it.
Were there any? I don't think there's a delicate way to put this, so I'm just. Were there any huge screw-ups?
There's one thing that I felt really bad about it, and it's a human casualty. Nobody died, but we got a JC that is an incredible grip guy. I've been working with him since my first movie, and he's got this talent to understand the cadence of how to push or pull a dolly track shot. We asked him something that was very controversial because he had to run through a very narrow distance between the bar that he was pushing and the edge of one of the sets, and it was a super fast thing. He had to make a little jump and avoid it. And in one of the takes, he went so much into it that his thumb stumbled across the edge of the set, and it was super fast. And the weight that it was ridiculous. It was like more than 100 kilos with the whole, with an arm of a crane, and he almost loses his thumb. And that's something that it's he wanted to do another one. I mean, he doesn't. Let's keep going. There was blood in the floor. He's like, guy, we were all like, because you have this criminal thing that we're making a movie. We're like kids playing. I mean, we shouldn't die playing. There's horrible things in life. I mean, a car crash is horrible. It's horrible. But you're driving and you know that can happen. But making a movie, oh my God, it's suddenly you have this blood frozen that is like, whoa, like trembling, and thank God that he's a super nice guy, and he was the one like, I'm fine. So he got snitches, and thank God everything is fine. It looks a little bit weird, I have to say, and I always feel bad for it. But that's an example of how people get in tune with this kind of mission of God they have to accomplish, and they lose track of reality.
You mentioned that Magnolia are putting this out in the US, and you've come here to the London Film Festival. There's a sales agent, but no distribution yet. And so I'm wondering, what's that experience like of coming to a film festival and I'm assuming being involved in potential sales as well, and not just coming to watch the film and do Q&As and all the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I've never been very aware of the mechanics of the industry in the movies that I've done before, because I consider that my responsibility is to make the movie as good as it can be in terms of how much cinema it can handle. And then I love being an ambassador of that work, of this teamwork, about the producers and the creative team. The thing is with Grand Piano is that the first time that we had this almost unanimous reaction to it, we were in Austin and 100% of the reviews were positive, and 60% were extremely positive. I mean, we never had a mixed kind of review. Then in Sitges, I thought there was going to be like, okay, now in Europe, if in America they said, well, let's face it, the script is what it is, but the movie is fantastic. In Europe, they were going to say, the movie is very well made, but the script is ridiculous. They were going to go and turn A-B into B-A. And I was defending Damien Chazelle because I think that what he put together, it's the reason why the movie works so well. I mean, there's nothing I'm doing that can save a bad script. If the script weren't working as well as it does when you read it, we wouldn't be here. The thing is that it's not easy to make it work as it works on paper on screen. That's what we had to put together and find out how to do it. But at this point, to answer your question, I feel very confident. I'm super happy. The movie was sold in more than 30 countries before it was like shown to an audience, because of the way it was pre-sold. And the US was the big thing, like saying, oh my God, nobody buys movies anymore. And Magnolia did a terrific job, and I'm super happy to be with people like Ty West and The Sacrament, his last movie released there. I mean, that is amazing. It's in the history books of this generation. I mean, I know Ty. I love him since I met him in 2005 in Sitges with The Roost. And he suddenly made the House of the Devil, and people went nuts. And then people started to judge him like, oh, but we want more of that. And he's an incredibly talented director. He can do all kinds of movies. And I'm so happy that The Sacrament is completely different. It's incredibly bold, and that it's working. So I don't think too much about that. I think that I'm fortunate enough to not be concerned about what's going to happen. I think that it looks good when it comes to UK. And something tells me that you will have the chance to see it on the silver screen soon.
Well, being in finally, I'd like to end by talking about the fact that you're in the cult strand. And I was thinking last night that, and again, going back to De Palma, there used to be a time when, Brian De Palma would put something like this out and it would be a mainstream entertainment. There was no question that it would not be in a multiplex. Well, there wasn't multiplexes back then, but
of course.
In a mainstream cinema. And now it feels like we were watching an underground film.
Exactly. It's so weird. And that was one of the concerns that we had. It's like, if people think that we're making this, and that it's just a mainstream movie, like a popcorn movie or a roller coaster movie, I cannot take it as a bad thing, because we don't have movies like this anymore. And the reason I'm making movies is because some people, when I was a kid, the people that were like 30-something, my age, like Spielberg, Joe Dante, John Landis, Robert Zemeckis, Richard Donner, those guys had the chance to do movies, and they used them to express themselves as filmmakers. Teenagers never, ever had movies crafted so well. And I think that I know what I know thanks to these guys that made movies better than it was required. So the fact that I started all the way around, I started with very personal, abstract, kind of hard to follow stuff, or very disturbing or upsetting material. It makes me feel so good, because it's, as you said, who was going to tell me that a movie like this was going to perceive as an underground achievement, instead of being a movie that should be there for 12-year-olds watching it and saying, oh my God, this is incredible, and being inspired to make movies like that, like I was back in the day. So yes, and the thing is that the generation that I love, George Lucas and Spielberg, they reacted to the lack of movies that they had during the generation, because when they were kids, they had these B movies, but the only thing they had that I really like quality was The Twilight Zone. Rod Serling's amazing job with writers like Richard Matheson and Ray Bradbury, and I think that's the thing. Generations tend to fill the gap of what you think that it should be done and nobody's done. And in the particular case of grand piano, it's ironic, but it's a bonus reason to feel satisfied. Like, hey, nobody's doing this. Wouldn't it be great if we can get back to have this kind of collective experience of watching a movie and having a great time and hopefully think a little bit about other things too. So yes, I thank you for saying it. I mean, to me it's a compliment. If somebody says that it's mainstream, I'm super fine. If somebody says it is underground, I'm super fine.
Well, I know the audience last night were thrilled by the movie. It was a packed house, so I think that's a good indication of what the response might be a couple months down the line when hopefully we will see it at multiplex.
We'll see it. Thank you, man.
Thank you so much for your time.